If you want to pump your body and expand your mind, there's only one place to go. Mind Pump. Mind Pump with your hosts, Sal DiStefano, Adam Schaefer, and Justin Andrews.
What a pleasure having our girl Krista and Lindsey in the studio.
Always fun with them.
Yeah, probably, and I think I've said this before a couple times, but I feel like of everyone that I've said this about, I think they for sure are the most closely resemble the female version kind of Mind Pump.
They got some flavor.
Yeah, the flavor, the chemistry that they have, the conversations are hilarious.
And the topics, they tend to kind of this broad stroke of health and wellness and fashion and they get into business a little bit. And so they tend to be similar in that fashion, I think. And then I love that they have great senses of humor, so we can talk.
Yeah.
We can have dirty jokes inside the episode.
Yeah,
and
that is refreshing.
They laugh with us.
Oh, these girls are hilarious. And we love every time we do a podcast with them, we enjoy. And if you haven't heard of them yet, pretty sure you're going to want to check out their podcast after listening to this interview, because you'll just hear they're very entertaining and very insightful. The podcast that they host is it's called the Almost 30 Podcast. Although it's funny, they're over 30 now, so they laugh. They said that they have to change the name at some point. You can find them on Instagram at Almost 30 Podcast. Their names are Krista Williams and Lindsey Simcik. Again, did I say her last name right? I think I did. And their website is almost30podcast.com. Now, before we get into the episode, reminding everybody, MAPS Strong, one of our most effective muscle-building, metabolism-boosting workouts ever, and fun, because it is different, is 50% off. So here's what you do. Go to mapsstrong.com, MAPSSTRONG.com, and use the code STRONG50, STRONG50, no space, for that discount. This promotion will end this month, and this program will not go on sale again for a very, very long time. So you definitely want to take advantage of that. And that's it. So here we are talking to two of our favorite female podcasters in the space, the girls from Almost 30 Podcast. Tell us about your guys' tour. I want to hear all about this tour that you guys are doing. What are these like? What are you guys doing at these?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so we went out last year on tour in 2018, and this is kind of like the story of Almost 30, where we have an idea, or our community kind of gives us an idea by asking us, and we're like, all right, let's just do it.
Yeah.
So we just do it. And, we didn't know what it was going to be like, but we oversold every tour stop in 2018.
Wow.
So
Nice.
It was super successful. And so this year we decided, our main objective this year is just growth and reaching more people and meeting more people. And so we're deciding to go international. So we're going to London and Australia, in addition to a bunch of, more domestic tour stops that we haven't been to yet. And the value of it is just like, it's so far beyond just getting more listeners, right? Like, to be able to meet people in person, to have that one-on-one connection. Yes, it does take time, it does take energy, but like, it's our differentiator in what we do. And people really appreciate it, and they feel seen and they feel heard. And, it's a lot for us, and it's not necessarily how we're making all of our big bucks, but like, it's worth it.
Now, how are they organized? How are they set up? Are they just live Q&As, or do you guys do like a live show in front of your audience?
Yeah, so we'll do a different setup and a different guest and a different schedule per city. So it's like a different, some city in Miami, we're going to Miami, Florida, is going to need to hear a different message or is interested in a different thing than someplace in Seattle. So it's like, we'll go with like the trending topic and then just find like a speaker or a guest that we've had on the podcast and we'll bring them there. But most of the time the format's kind of the same. Lindsey and I will open and talk about like what we're working on, something that's relevant to us at the time. And then we'll have our speaker or guest, and then we'll close with like a Q&A.
Okay.
We do live shows too. We're going to do those as well at like big theaters. But the smaller events that we do in the cities is more like intimate conversations with people.
Have you guys done the live shows yet?
No. So our
Not
first
yet.
live show is actually, we want you guys to come. San Francisco, July 27th at the Independent.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Have you guys been there?
Yeah, I've been there. It's
Really?
cool. Yeah, they do like little small concerts and
Yeah.
stuff, and then they're really cool.
Yeah.
I saw, God, what is her name right now? I can't think. I introduced you guys to her. The girl that plays like 7 different instruments. She's badass.
Oh.
From Australia is where she's originally from. I found her when she was like.
Oh no, I love
She's
her.
like a YouTube phenomenon.
Yeah, she does. God, I can't think of her name right now.
Tosh?
Yes,
Tosh is number one.
So
she's badass.
It's actually a crime that she's not really going to more cities. Tosh Sultana. I'll look
Yes,
her up.
yeah, Tosh Sultana. That's all right.
Dude, she's the shit.
She's badass.
She's beautiful
Yeah.
too.
And so I found her
She
like
lesbian?
4 or 5 years ago when she was like super underground, and my brother-in-law turned me on to her, and I was like, oh, this is badass. And then we went and saw her there, and so it was like 50 people there.
Really?
Yeah, it was super intimate. It was
yeah,
it's like
she's
I said, when she
talent.
was super small time, nobody knew who she was.
And,
but-
and these are going to be like a podcast, like you're
Yeah.
going to do like an interview, or just the two of you, or
Yeah.
how's that going to work?
Podcast.
Yeah, so we want to kind of mirror how we do things on the podcast. So, and again, we're kind of just experimenting as we go along, but opening up with Krista and I and how we do our intros, which is kind of a 15, 20 minute catch up, what's going on with us, funny, interacting with the crowd, and then we'll bring on our guest. So in San Francisco, we have Lacey Phillips coming on. So it's going to be all about manifestation, shadow work, reprogramming your subconscious. She's amazing, and we've done a couple events with her. So
That's awesome. We've done some of these live Q&As ourselves,
Yeah.
and I was surprised at how nervous they made me. I didn't realize that I would be nervous in front of, and I couldn't figure out why, because I've spoken to so many people in so many groups in the past, and I think it's because these people know me, but I don't know them. So it felt. Did you guys experience anything like that?
100%. Yeah, it surprises me every day. Like someone will be like, "Oh yeah, you had this happen to you," and they'll say something that I've shared that I don't remember, or that I've felt like, because on the podcast you guys are the same, like it's just me and Lindsey, or it's just me and a guest. I'll be very personal and I'll be very open,
Sure.
but I forget people are listening. So people will come up to me and be like, "I know you have like body image issues or whatever," and I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, fuck, I said that." Or like, I'll say stuff about my family and they'll be like, "I know you and your mom have a weird relationship and I relate to you." I'm like, "What?" Because I would never like at a dinner of 12 people be like, "Hey guys, I want to tell you about,
mom."
my mom." I would never ever
Yeah.
do that. So it seriously surprises me. And it's like, and my thing too is like, I always want to feel like I reciprocate the energy people give me. So literally if someone comes up to me, I'll talk to them for 4 hours and they will be like, "I gotta go. Like you're freaking me out," because I just want to like make them feel like, because I appreciate it so much, and I'm so like Midwest in that way, where I just feel so grateful of like anyone that listens, that I just want to like connect with them so much. You know what I mean?
Right. Now when we came and saw you guys, that was what, a year and a half now, or was it?
No, was it a year and a half or more?
Was it longer?
It might have been more.
Might have been almost 2
Dude,
years.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Do you remember how far along you guys were? Because you guys were relatively new when we came by. We were too. We hadn't been doing it that much
you've
longer.
been doing. But you guys were big.
Yeah, you guys
Yeah,
are
yeah,
bigger.
yeah.
We were nervous.
I know.
No, it was we were maybe just starting the tour in 2018 or something like that.
It was shortly after you
Shortly
guys
after?
were planning the tour. Because I remember we had left, and then I saw you guys were doing that. I was like, "Oh, cool! The girls are killing it, dude. They're off on tour now already." So I remember seeing that come up. What I wanted to ask you was this journey now. I mean, where you guys are at, you guys have continued to grow and blow up. I see you all over the place. What are some of the things that you guys have learned in this space, like since then?
I mean, just bringing back to the community for a second,
Yeah.
it's like, it's everything, and it's not about Krista and I. I think you can go into starting a business like this where we are technically the face of the brand and spend a lot of time and energy thinking about that, about us and how we look and how people see us. And it's been such a relief to kind of, yes, of course, we have like branding and photo shoots that we need to do for certain things, but that's not the focus. And to really, anytime we feel like, okay, what do we do next? Or we're feeling a little bit uninspired, we go immediately to the community. So whether it's our secret Facebook group or, our DMs, quite literally, or our emails, like, what do people want to hear? What are they talking about? Like, how can we make them feel more supported? And that's kind of how our ambassador program was born recently. So we had people who were like, hey, we want you to come on tour to this city. And we're trying, to go to as many cities as possible, but we couldn't. So we wanted to empower them and inspire them to create community where they are. So we have 70 ambassadors all over the world. Shara here is actually the ambassador lead for all of them. And, they have events every month, whether it's a yoga class, a community service centered event. We had a group of like 15 women in Minnesota go help this one girl move out of her house because she needed help. And they had like a day doing that
That's so
together.
sweet.
You know, it's just like, and that's the thing. So, you know, it's not all about us, and it doesn't always have to be on us. We can kind of let the community inspire what we do next.
Yeah.
So you feel like it's gotten more intimate since you guys started doing the live tour with your audience?
Yeah.
It's like bigger and more intimate. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just more like the tour is just more, and it's also more like a brand play. So it's like people that don't listen to the podcast would come to the events too. You know, so it's the growth too is like also a reason for our growth is like having a business mindset with things. Like in LA, there's a lot of talent, but a lot of people are, you know, we've found are spiritual or, you know, talented or whatever, but they don't have like a business mindset or like a discipline. So they're not going to grow or be super successful because they're not thinking about things strategically and thinking about the long term. And in that case, it's like the reason why we launched Your Podcast Pro, which helps people start a podcast, monetize a podcast, grow a podcast. So it's like seeing an opportunity there with the growth of Almost 30 and where things are going and like helping to be ahead of the trend to like that podcasting is so big by creating this resource for people. So it's just really being like business minded in a lot of ways and then just like being super disciplined and like outworking people.
Now, what have been some of the growing pains since that you guys have gone through with scaling the business?
Yeah, I think one thing for me that I have a hard time with is like the team management. Like we have now us and then 3 people or 4 people on our team. And I just really have a hard time with like, I don't know, like stepping into the role of a manager or of a business owner or of someone that is in that position. And we're friends with people, they're listeners, they love the show. So it's an interesting dynamic to really do that and to be a manager and to like, I don't know, manage those conversations. So that's something that I've had a really hard time with as like a growing pain. And I have issues with trust. You know, I understand that like if someone's working for me that they love what we're doing, that it might not be their end game. So when what we do is so important because of the ideas that we bring to the table, like you guys are so successful a lot because of the ideas that you have are different than other people's. And that's the same for us. So it's like when we're working with someone, if they were to take all the ideas that they heard about us and our business someplace else, that would be terrible. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to trust and to like grow sustainably and like learn to manage being a manager and like doing your normal job.
Yeah. When you say trust, like how do you mean that with staff? Like to trust that they're going to do as good of a job as you would in their role?
Yeah. For me, it's actually not that. Like I literally like when I give someone something, I don't think about it twice. Like I trust everyone to do the job. For me, it's like a trust with my ideas and like with our vision and our strategic plan. So like, or just money stuff. Like, you know, our contacts is a lot. You guys have so many contacts too. Like your contacts are really important. And like when we do events with people, with brands, with speakers, with all these things, if they were to take 400 contacts that we've made in the past year and go do their own thing, like they'd be really far ahead. So that kind of stuff, not just like, not really doing the job, but more stuff like that.
Right. What now through this process, have there been like, what have been the moments that, or things that you've done that have really taken you guys? Because I'm sure there's been a few pivotal moments that have really, you guys have seen big jumps. Can you guys go over some of them?
Yeah, I mean, just in general with expanding the team, like just hiring and bringing people on to do things that we are either not good at or don't want to do. And granted, we're still doing things that are a little bit like, I don't want to do this, but we do it. You know, we're still in the mud in that way. But it's been really to manage our energy in that way, to have them take on what was an energy suck has given us this space and the energy to think more creatively, to think more strategically, because we're not like lost in the tiny little details and the emails and the daily goings on.
What was the first one that you guys gave away where you were like, oh my gosh, like this person is so much better at that. Now we're like, what was the first time?
Chloe.
Yeah. Chloe Leonard's been with us since the beginning, almost the beginning, maybe like 5 months in. And she is, you know, basically creative director. So we give her, you know, our vision. We explain our vision and what we're looking for, say, for tour branding or whatever it is. And she just executes. And she's just a creative genius in that way. And we're creative, but we can't execute on the graphic design level. She designs our website, all of that, social media.
Yeah.
She just gets it. She's younger, like she kind of gets.
That takes us to a next level, because it's like, for us and our brand, it's very like female focused. So like having a social media following is huge. So her growing the social media following and having it be like having posts where people engage on the post is silly, but it helps, and it really draws other people in. And then her creating like a really beautiful website helps us get bigger brand deals, helps us get better guests because it's beautiful, and people, you know, we are big or we are something, but like if you see some package that's beautiful and professional, you're like, wow. Like you may even think we're bigger than we are. You know what I mean?
Talk about that with social. I think that's something that we have a lot of listeners that aspire to have a podcast or build a business on Instagram or like that. What are some of the things that you would give as far as advice to that person that wants to do that, and what you've learned in your guys' business? Like you grazed over real quick the engagement part. I think that's something that people misunderstand, that's far more valuable.
That's most of the value
than having hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of people that are looking at you and just looky-loos.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many brands we see that like buy followers, and it's like, why would someone follow Shakeology for 100,000 followers? Like, do you know what I mean? I'm like, what are you posting that's valuable? So it's like,
yeah, badass shakes.
Honestly, I'm like, it's real filling.
Don't deny it.
So it's like people want to follow like an actual brand voice or someone that has something to say. So like make sure that you're being authentic. I know it's overused, but you have to be authentic in yourself. Something that really has helped us is posting memes. So we credit them. But if you post memes, it's like, if you saw a funny meme, even if you like the podcast or not, it's really more of a question of if you think this is funny or humorous. So if you're in our target demographic, for the most part, you're probably going to think this is humorous. Memes are taggable. Memes are shareable. People can find our account because their friends are tagging them on the meme. So that's been really helpful for us. Also posting, having our followers or having our guests share and tag has been really helpful for us. And then we repost everything that we get shared on. So that is like an encouragement for them, because then they'll be reposted on our account. So it's really thinking about your end user and your listener or your follower, and like, what are they interested in? For us, it's like meme accounts or beauty things, wellness tips, having our guests share and repost, and then just like engaging with them. We respond to every DM. We respond to every comment. You know, we're making sure that we're on top of it so that they know that we're like listening.
And even on our personal, I think it's really important. I've seen where like they'll tag Almost 30 and Lindsey and Krista when they're sharing an episode or what have you. And the fact that, you know, we'll respond and comment more than just like an emoji. Yeah. And they're like, oh my God, I never thought you would respond, and da 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 da.
I'm sure people.
And I'm like, too. I'm in bed. I'm like, yeah, sure, this is amazing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it really, for us, it doesn't take a lot of time. It does and it doesn't, but it's the return on that is them remembering like, oh my God, they're engaged and they reached out and they care. Yeah. And then, you know, they're apt to like the next Almost 30 post, every post following that, and listen to the podcast.
How about some of the bad ideas? I love sharing like some of the ideas that we have. Like, Justin comes with a bad idea almost every week.
Notorious. You know? but I own that shit. So.
Dude, that's the most important. What's a bad idea? What's the most recent?
I'll tell you. Well, I won't tell you the most recent, but the one that first that comes to mind is.
Do you know it's bad at first, or do you know later?
No.
I've told this one many times, but I thought like, okay, so I heard a podcast about advertisement and like how cheap it was to advertise in this one particular platform.
You're like, so I'm doing billboards.
So it was it was porn. Okay, so and I'm like, look, we're raw, we're crazy. You know, this might work.
Wait, hold on. Wait, clarify. What?
We were going to advertise on porn ads. Then Justin walks in. Let me tell you this.
Hold on a second.
Wait, just hear it all the way through.
Mind pump.
First off, we all bought in.
That's what I was going to say. Okay, Justin walks in.
I closed everybody on this.
Let me tell the story because Justin's terrible at telling stories. So Justin walks in. Okay?
I love dudes.
Right. So Justin walks into the old studio. We had a little tiny thing about a third the size of this room right here. And he comes in, he goes, I got this great fucking idea. And he goes, hear me out. And he starts to explain where he's heard this. And he's like, listen, the how much it costs per click is the lowest than anywhere else. So it's really cheap to advertise in porn.
And the traffic on porn ads
is ridiculous.
On porn
It's insane.
sites is insane.
For sure.
It's ridiculous.
And
So
it worked for a food truck company, and it worked for a couple of that obviously doesn't apply to us. But
So he shares this with all of us.
I'm
and
actually not. I'm not against it. to
Right.
be
So
honest.
we actually all go, this is brilliant.
I
We go,
agree.
we think it's brilliant. And so instantly we go, okay, we all give ourselves homework. Everybody's to go home that day and come up with 5 ads. And
the
return.
most raunchy ads you've ever
Yeah.
heard.
Well,
like-
so the challenge was okay, when you're watching porn, the last thing you want to do is leave the porn and click and go somewhere else.
Yeah, you're so
so
right.
it's
So
got
how-
to kind of look.
How are we going to get their
Porn-esque.
attention, and how are we going to get them to click on our ad? So we came up with the most terrible.
It's like pump that
Like
pussy.
non-repeatable.
It's worse than that.
Fill your holes with Mind Pump.
It'd be like, and it was like a porn picture, and it'd be like, fill your holes with Mind Pump or some shit like that. Yeah, and it's-
Wow.
It was out there.
Yeah.
So that was
So did you do it?
we did a
did.
few.
Yeah, we did a few. It was terrible. Didn't do anything. So it was one of the first fails. Another one that we did that again we thought was a brilliant idea. I think I brought this one. Like I was following. I love to follow all the the Instagram butt models, right? So I've got
As
one.
you do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I openly share this. So I've got this girl who's got like 2.5 million followers, right? And so I contact her and ask, what would it cost to advertise on your page? I think it was like $1,000 a post. I think is what we paid. And I believe we did 3 or 4 with her. And we did, we planned it out. I went back and forth with her. Like, obviously, you do all these bikini, half-naked photos. Like how do you share a podcast? So, she did a really good job. Like, she had this sexy shot of her laying on the bed, and, like, she had her iPad open, and it was, like, zoomed in on Mind Pump and everything. And so she was listening to Mind Pump laying on her bed also. So I was like, okay, this is brilliant. Like, this is a great idea. So and that was actually the first... I believe we did that first or after. I don't remember if we did that before or after.
No, we did that after.
But it was like the first bit of like real money that we were going to spend on advertising.
Yeah.
Like we were now spending thousands.
We got zero.
We got zero.
Well,
Zero listens
That's
from
when we
that.
realized that the amount of followers that you have doesn't mean shit. It's about your
100%.
influence. And that's when we learned that. For like 2.5 million followers, we got nothing.
Yeah.
We felt
Yeah.
nothing.
We were
from
like,
that.
we'll take 0.5% is what
No
we should have
conversions.
felt. Like
Well, that's the thing is like it's actually kind of sad, but a lot of like brands do that with girls and like the Instagram girls because you see 2.5 and you see this girl and you're like, she's kind of fitness because she has a nice ass and a nice body, but like people aren't. This is the thing is people follow certain accounts to buy, people follow certain accounts for advice, people follow certain accounts for whatever. Like people follow her ass account just to see an ass photo.
That's right.
If her caption is longer than like at the beach, people are out. You
No,
know, like
you're
they
right.
don't fucking read that.
No, you're right.
And it's unfortunate, but like that's the thing is there's accounts that have 100,000 that I follow. It's like everything that she says, I'm like, I'm gonna take that as a tip and I'm gonna take that as a
Right.
wellness advice and buy
Right.
it, whatever. People don't come to Almost 30 for like tips right now. They come to like laugh or to connect or whatever. But with her, it's unfortunate, but you find that out. It's like people aren't going to her account for
And this is, we talk about this when people are building a social media business. It's like, okay, do you just want followers?
Exactly.
Or do you want
I always say, I'm like,
impact?
why? People are always like, I need more followers. I'm like, I literally ask them to their face. I'm like, why?
Right.
Why do you need more followers? You could literally make tons of fucking money without followers.
Right.
And that's the thing.
Even our managers, and it's almost like we have to, and maybe you guys
Yeah.
feel this too, where we have to educate not only like if anyone represents us or brands to the fact that like engagement is key and like the micro influencers have just as much influence in certain spaces as these macro ones because they are so engaged. I mean, we had a conversation with like someone on our management team and they're like, yeah, we gotta work on your following.
It's like, oh
and we're
my
like,
God.
got it, but
Got
like,
it.
why?
No,
you know,
it's
and they're like,
terrible.
because this brand isn't gonna look at you because you only have 75,000 followers. And I'm like, but have they looked at like, have they listened to the podcast? Have they tapped into our community and seen how engaged they are? Like, it's only a numbers game for certain brands. And at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't really.
Well,
I'm like,
They'll learn.
I
know.
I just talked about this in an interview I did recently that we're in the middle of a shift in that right now.
Yeah.
We just 5-6 years ago, big brands weren't even aware of like Instagram. And if they
sure.
were, it was more like this. It was like, okay, we're Pepsi or Coca-Cola, we're this massive company. We understand social media is important, so let's here's throw a couple $1 million over here, build a page out, make it look cool, and that's all it is, right? It's just to mirror everything else. Where if you actually have some real engagement, like you're saying, there's a lot of power to that. So companies now, okay, we figured it out. You have to be on social. Okay, so what's the next thing to do? Let's go find these people that have massive followings. What they're starting to find out, though, is exactly that, is that, okay, just because you have 2 million followers, if you don't have real engagement, if these people aren't coming to learn or get advice from you, then you advising them to go buy a product is worthless. They're not no one's going to go buy it.
It's much more surgical than the old way of working with advertisement, where it was kind of this big nuke bomb and we're trying to cover as many people as possible. It's much more surgical today. So like if you're a hotel, for example, and you want to attract more visitors to your hotel, then what you want to do is you want to find a micro influencer who has a lot of influence, and her page or his page has to do with travel, has to do with, those are the people that are going to drive people over, not just the butt model who's
numbers.
got exactly the big numbers. Nobody's going to care. Nobody cares what she has to say or what he has to say. And their influence, they have no influence.
And that's the thing too, is like as a blogger, like I blogged before this and I still do sometimes, but it's like I've been to tons of events with like influencers that have 300K, that have 25K, that have 1 million, and the number, like how much, this is the thing that's important to me, is reach, impact, me being myself, but also making money. Like if I look at another podcast that has 150,000, which is double ours, they may not be making as much money as me.
Right.
Because I'm thinking more about the business, and I'm thinking more about strategic ways to like earn money rather than like having fucking 10,000 more followers.
Right.
What's more important to me is like me being smart about my business and making money.
Right.
Plus, here's the other side of it. I think a lot of people want fame and notoriety because it feeds into their ego and maybe gives them a little bit of self-worth. For me, that's the necessary evil. I don't even enjoy. I enjoy seeing the benefits of okay, I'm actually reaching people and we're making a good impact. But I would hate to have that without the value behind it. Because do you really want to be recognized wherever you go? Do you really want to have millions of people know what you look like and what you're doing if it's not providing any value and you're not getting anything for it other than your own self-worth, which is fleeting, and you see so many people doing that. I think I think things are starting to shift, and I think a lot of companies and brands are starting to realize that as well. Because like with us, when we work with our sponsors, we convert higher than podcasts that are 4 or 5 times our size because of the influence that we've created with our audience. And I think brands are starting to see that. And
they trust you.
Yeah. So what are the mistakes that you guys have made? Talk about some of the big ones that you guys advertise on porn sites too.
So we actually did a porn. We're like, hey guys, come check this out.
You did a sex tape.
It's amazing.
You tried the sex tape angle.
Yeah. So we were like, we're desperate.
This worked for Paris. Let's see if this will work for us.
See, guys, I told you there's another level to this.
Literally, it was actually my mom that set it up. Sorry, that was hot. Yeah, we've done a lot. I mean, it's just been like a learning process throughout. There hasn't been any like nonstops. It's been like our branding at the beginning was real whack. It was like us in these like wacky costumes. Our intro was
we were like in a like bikini with like a track jacket and then like a chain and then like I don't even.
It was
like Run DMC type.
Honestly, truly.
Great.
Do not Google.
Old school.
We're trying to figure out how to get it off Google because people will still grab that photo and use it without our permission.
There's a picture of us floating around. I want to delete.
What is the deal?
I'm like wearing glasses.
Everybody uses it too
face.
because it pops up because it's been used so many times.
Oh, it's terrible.
Dude,
yeah.
We've actually been in contact with Google. We're like, we need to remove these. What are people doing?
If you figure it out, let us know.
They're so corny.
But this is us on because to your point about like the notoriety thing, we would much rather, obviously we love being out there and meeting people, but like the quote unquote fame thing is not something we're like drooling about, right? So when we have to kind of do those types of things, which is like photo shoots and get ready for this and that, we are like grade A, never ready and never prepared for that stuff. So, we'll have a photo shoot and we'll think we're like kind of preparing and then we'll show up looking like fucking clowns. Like we're like, let's go natural. Let's go like white t-shirt and just like super, like whatever neutral.
And we'll come wearing sequins jackets and like red lips.
We're like, I thought you.
But that's what's hard being 2 girls. Is like, we literally say, I'm like 90% of what we do is corny. I'm like,
corny
our life is corniness. Because you have to take photos and we're like,
yeah.
It was like we literally live our lives corny. There wasn't something that happened that was a mistake that I actually said, and I was like, oh, this is one of our things that we're going to talk about as like a huge problem that we had or like an issue that we had. I know the music on our first intro was copyright infringement, so that was a big problem for us.
Did you guys get like a letter, cease and desist?
We got nailed for the first website we ever did. The developer actually was pulling stock images off and it was like some other fitness girl, and she like came after all of us really hard, and we were like, what the fuck? And so of course we were pissed. We were pissed at the person that we hired who went and did that. Right? Like, I mean, we're paying you to do that job. Like, that should be like 101. You don't go fucking steal images or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So that was a mistake we made. That was a headache that we had to deal with.
Yeah, it's a headache. It's always happens that way.
Because and of course she's like one of those chicks that wanted it, and then she blasted it on her social media to try and make us look bad, like we were like intentionally stealing. And we're like,
how does that make you feel in the moment? Because sometimes we very rarely have that, but when it comes up, like it'll take us out for a whole day.
It's a really good question actually, and our marketing team always talks to us. Casey, who heads that up, is always reminding us, like, don't pick up the brick, is what he says. And it's right. It's like you initially want to fire and you want to be like, fuck you. Like, you know what I'm saying? And you don't. You take the high road. You just leave it. You leave it alone. You leave it alone and you don't engage on something like that. And what's cool now, and I know you guys have the same thing, you've built such a strong community, that what ends up happening is after she tries to smear like that, 30, 40 of our people end up coming over there and being like, if I guarantee these guys didn't do this on purpose. If you know them, that's not their style to do that. And we did. We solved it within 24 hours. It was pulled down.
This actually brings up a good topic. Like, how do you guys deal with the criticisms and stuff? Because media, new media in particular, can be brutal.
I know.
How do you guys, like, what are some of the negative things that you guys have heard? How do you deal with that?
So recently, we have guests on our show. So for us to manage, the histories of our guests, what they do on their own time and in their own brands, we cannot do enough research to like make sure everyone is squeaky clean. And, nothing's been so crazy that we've, had
Harvey Weinstein episode never got released.
So for real.
So we're good.
But our girls, I think, because they care so much, because also people want to be heard and engage in conversation, which I think is beautiful. Like, they will bring this up and they will dig and find some things about people and say, why did you have this person on? They did this. And it's just a fine line, because why we're bringing them on is because of the good that they're doing. And one, we want to be forgiven and given the chance to evolve and change if we were to do anything quote unquote bad.
Do you guys address it then on the show and be like, hey, we had so-and-so on the show. Some of you guys said this stuff. Do you guys bring it up, or do you guys...
So it lives mainly in our secret Facebook group. So we have about 11,000 people in there, and so they'll bring it up in there. And yes, we've responded to things like that there. Bringing it up on the show, we could.
I mean, I got called out actually for talking about like cancel culture. Talking about like
what's that?
It's like how just like people do one thing and people are like canceled, like people just go after them, and then the way that people go after someone is almost crueler than what they've done. So like if someone does something bad, say someone was to say something bad about a particular group of people in the press, people respond and people will be like, you should die, all your family should die, all your kids should die, all that stuff. So sometimes it's almost like the response is more intense and more cruel than the actual act itself. So I was talking a lot about how I think that's a big problem in our society and all of these things. And I've even been called out for saying like, you can't silence us and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, I have a really hard time with it, to be honest. I can't really, it's hard for me to take it. And that's something that I'm really working on this year, is to be better about that, because that could be a hindrance from our growth. If I don't have the ability to like close off my energy to allowing that kind of stuff to affect me, because that's really important for me to stay, myself.
Yeah, the bigger you get too, the more the bigger those things will happen. Because the current trend in climate is like, oh, I found this tweet from 2006 where you said
what's happening?
This phrase, which was perfectly acceptable in 2006, but today has now been decided that you can't say that, you can't do that, and they'll hold it to you, and then they'll like with the pitchforks and the whatever. And I mean, our approach has always been whatever, fuck you, we'll say whatever we want. And it's kind of helped us be a little bit bulletproof in that sense. Are you guys, how does your audience respond with that? How do you feel with that kind of stuff? Do you guys say like whatever or?
Yeah.
We're navigating that right now. And the hesitation I have with saying whatever is I want them to know that we care and that we hear them, you know? So we want to respond, but I also don't want to give it a lot of energy because we know our intention and everything that we do, and that we try to do our best with everything that we do. But we also say on the other side of that we're always learning, and we are always open to receiving, that feedback, evaluating it. Does it apply? Can we learn from it? Great. If not, then we can kind of deflect it.
Do you think it's gone too far now with the current culture where people are just offended or they're looking for reasons to?
Well, this is the thing. It's like, so I'm like a huge conspiracy theorist person, and I like feel like when I'm thinking about the way that our culture goes to attacking and to calling people out and stuff, it's just a way to segregate us more, and it's just a way to keep people from communicating and keep people from talking.
Absolutely.
So that's essentially like perpetuating the agenda that people say that they don't want, because people are now afraid to talk. People are now afraid to say anything. And I'm not saying that it's okay for someone that's like, just in a like a very particular type of group to speak, but I'm just saying that like it's important that we do continue communication, and like people need to be more forgiving and accepting of people along the process. Like we should be able to talk and say something even if it's not completely perfect, so we can learn like what is right.
Yeah, silencing people is I think a terrible thing. I think if you battle them with your ideas. If you don't like their ideas, then go ahead and have your own ideas. But what we're seeing right now is comedians.
Yeah.
Now, people don't realize this with the history of comedy, like the court jester, for example. You can call those the first professional comedians, right? They were the only ones that could make fun of the king, and people knew that when the jester got killed, that they were dealing with a tyrant. They knew that when the king couldn't take a joke because that's what that guy was there for. He was there to lighten things up, make fun of the king, call things out, make political jokes. They were really the ones that had that kind of free speech, and people knew when something happened to the jester, oh shit, we're dealing with a real tyrant. Comedians forever have been the ones to say this shit that we're not supposed to be able to say, but say it in a way that it's comedy, but also has some power behind it. They were able to make political jokes, racial jokes, sexual joke, whatever. But in a way where it's like political commentary, and they were able to get away with it because it's comedy. And this has been history of comedy forever. Now you got comedians who are getting banned from colleges.
It's the purest form of social commentary. It's so necessary
that's so true.
for people to, see through a different lens, and that's such a better way to present it to people, to show them like where we may be sort of falling short, and to stifle that is really alarming to me, and that's where I get like paranoid.
Yeah,
sure.
I listened to a podcast where there was a gentleman who he worked in the espionage world of social media. And what you have, and you would talk about conspiracies. You have other countries who
all about it.
Will go in and stoke the fire just to separate people. And so, and you also see both political parties doing this. So you'll get like a crazy tweet from the liberal left that is just most people think is absolutely insane. And then what the right will do is they'll promote it to make the left look crazy and fire up the right.
Yep. Yeah.
Then the left gets fired up to try to defend it, and it creates more division. And I think that's it's permeating the whole culture. And so with new media, it's one of those things. It's like, what do? Tiptoe because you're going to step on a bomb, or you just say this is just how it is, and you keep going. And what ends up happening is you either end up with people who are so afraid to say anything that everything they say is perfectly manicured, or you get people like Donald Trump who will just say the most terrible whatever shit and say I don't care. So that's what we're starting to deal with. It's kind of an interesting.
I also don't think it's your guys' responsibility to have to go and vet the fuck out of somebody just because you have them on your podcast. Yeah. I'm here to interview and entertain, and there's plenty. We've had 400 guests I think now we've had on the show, like ridiculous amount, and at least 100 I don't like.
Yeah,
I got no fucking.
They don't come back.
Right, I got no problem saying that. Like we brought them on the show because there was something that they had to say that we wanted to put out there, and whether that means put it out there so we could disagree with it and have conversation around it, or just be entertained by it, or whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. That's not my job. My job is to bring things that are interesting to hear about. And I don't give a fuck what this guy did 10 years ago or what he may do 5 years later. I'm not putting my stamp on him because he's been on my podcast. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Have you guys had any
100%.
controversial podcasts like that where you've brought a guest on knowing that you guys disagree on certain things?
I'm trying to think of people that we've disagreed with. We've definitely had Yeah. Yeah.
One comes to mind.
It's hard to even talk about as controversial. And that's the thing is, like, nowadays, I am so careful. Like, I feel like I have to be so careful because there's one guest in particular I'm thinking about that's pretty controversial that I don't even feel comfortable saying anything about because of the topic. And it's like, because no matter what I say, it can be like cured as something.
But I also, and we've been talking about this a bit recently, where like the actual fear of that is bringing more of the
100%.
commentary. So I do think, we're working on personally being able to talk about it more and being, maybe not saying it the right way all the time, but being okay with saying, I'm learning. Like, I might not be perfect at how I explain this.
Is this show still up? Did you guys take it down?
Everything's still up. Yeah.
It is, but you're on
No, it's just like for a personal disagreement, and it wasn't awkward on the pod. Like, I'm too nice to be like a little. I don't think I've been like questioning or controversial with anyone as a guest right now.
But I think,
so far.
But I think what it brought up recently with us, some recent guests where there have been media has written about them and what has happened, and it's such a one-sided thing.
Yep.
And we know, because we know them personally, the other side of it. So it's just an interesting thing where I want to talk to our girls about, like, hey, when you hear a story and you read it in the fucking New York Times or New York Post or whatever, like, let's all assume that there is another side to this story. You know what I mean? Because there's just so many layers and so many. An employee could have had something against that person and they wanted to, bash them publicly. Like, you just never know.
Yeah.
So I'm struggling just to, how do you have that conversation with them and educate them?
A wise man once said, believe half of what you see and nothing that you hear.
Literally.
Yeah.
And I don't trust the media at all. Like,
truly.
knowing what you said, and then, Amazon owns the media. Like, everyone owns the media. So I don't trust the media. So when I read something, I take it with a huge fucking grain of salt.
Yeah.
So for us to have to explain someone else's actions, not my job.
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak for anyone else. It's not my responsibility. Of course, we're going to make sure that everyone that we bring to the table for the podcast is important and impactful and someone that we believe in. But, like, I actually think it's bullshit when someone, like, and I'm not going to, like, cancel someone or, like, be like, yo, you're done, and shame them.
I don't even think it needs to go that far. I bring people on the show that need to be out. I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yes.
That's it. It ends right there. It's like, I'm not even saying they're going to bring something valuable. I think it's an interesting conversation. We'll find out what the fuck happens.
Totally.
It's having that approach versus
there's a normal self-censorship that happens with everyday conversation with people. Like, if you're talking to certain people, like, okay, I'm gonna adjust my language a little bit so I don't offend this person, and this person, I don't know him as well or whatever, and that's normal. But I think what's happening with the way media is and the way the culture is kind of moving is you start to feel muzzled all the time, to the point where you have a show that's already it's aired, and you right now are feeling muzzled to even talk about a show that's still up. How does that feel? Does that feel like
it's hard?
Yeah.
And I have a hard time with it because, and too, like, my personality is, like, very, I say stuff that, like, is not appropriate most times. So it's like, not most times, but, like, sometimes. And the way I joke is, like, very inappropriate. So it's hard for me to deal with that, and it's hard for me to be myself all the time, and that's the beauty. That's what people come for, is for me to be myself, and that's why they fell in love with the podcast. So I'm having a hard time with it, and I'm having to work through it. But like Lindsey said, like, I'm working on my energetics of, like, I don't give a fuck, of being completely I don't give a fuck, and standing in my I don't give a fuck about what anyone says, because I know the truth, and the truth is that, like, I'm doing everything I can. I'm who I should be. I am learning, and I'm growing, and you know what I mean? So I'm just working on that energy, but it's a challenge, but it's what I signed up for. To be completely honest, this is the world that I'm in, and this is, like, the cross that I bear.
Your audience is largely female.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think
I'd
that
say like 80-20.
Do you think that makes a difference in terms of really? Like how so?
Excuse me while I fall out of my chair.
Do you think it makes a difference?
Like, I love y'all. I
Holy
love y'all.
shit.
Girl power for life, but girls are so hard on other girls.
Yeah.
It's in fucking insane.
And we try to set the tone like that. And I think what's happening now, like, you know, with the recent thing that happened, it's like it's an opportunity for us to really set the tone, like how we deal with this and set the standard for, like, you know, not criticizing everything a successful woman does. Because you set them at this, like, super high standard because they're supposed to be paving the way. And it's like the beautiful thing about anyone paving the way, whether they're male, female, them, they, whatever, is that, like, they are going to make human mistakes along the way. And that's how we can relate, and they can become expanders for us. And we can say, I can do that one day because I've made mistakes like that before, but we still prevail.
We were just talking about this, the halo effect, right? That we have with we see this a lot. It's super common in, like, athletes. Look, we just had Tiger Woods won the Masters, and the dude is widely hated now because of what he did in his past. Which I always find it really ironic that we think that somebody who's become fucking super amazing at something probably doesn't have a lot of other aspects of their life out of balance. In fact, it's more often than not that way. What made you so amazing at something was that you were fanatical about it to the point that you sacrificed much of the rest of your life to be amazing at this thing. And so we praise and we worship this aspect of their life, and then we think because that's so amazing that all other aspects of their life is too. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. We don't have the human capabilities to be. If you're going to be so fucking badass at this said topic that you're on my show talking about, I already assume that you're probably out of balance somewhere else.
Well, it's like when Leonardo DiCaprio's preaching about, like, climate change. Everybody's like, oh, it's Leonardo. Listen to him. And he's flying around on his jet and he's, you know, spewing out. It's that's the halo effect that I think, you know, Adam's referring to. But, you know, as far as the female audience is concerned, I mean, statistically speaking, women are the largest consumers in the country, right? Like, if you want to cater to an audience and you have a business that caters to an audience,
you got to win over
the female audience because they're the ones that make most of the purchasing decisions in the home. They're also the most loyal. So, like, men are typically, and this is a general thing. Of course, it breaks down on the individual, but men tend to not be as loyal to brands or as loyal to certain companies as women, whereas a woman will say she'll go out of her way to purchase a product from a company she has always worked with, whereas guys are like,
because the marketing makes an emotional connection with women.
It could be that, and just who knows what it could be evolutionary, it could be that, who knows. But then
evolutionary, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, it could be, right. But you're also saying that there's also some potential challenges because women tend to be harder on each other. Why do you guys think women? Because I've examined that. I've seen situations where women will just be like the whole slut shaming thing.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of guys that do that. I know a lot of women that do that.
Yeah.
What's the deal? What do you think that is?
Well, that's the thing is, like, being in this industry, it's like I see all guys and, like, being friends with guys and, like, Justin, any guy that I've dated, it's like they'll always have friends that they're like, oh yeah, Billy's crazy, like he fucked my wife, but whatever. You know, guys are just like
Billy.
Yeah, they're like, he's cool, and they're like, he's cool, whatever, and they don't care, and it's just crazy. Like, girls will be like, yeah, she, you know, like stole my shirt one night to go out, and so I'm not friends with her anymore. It's just like a weird thing about girls that, like, we are so much harder, and especially being women in the wellness space, like, the standard for us is so much higher, and maybe it is evolutionary where, like, one man would be with a bunch of women and so they're vying for attention to, like, be able to procreate or something like that. But I just know that it can only start with us, I guess, and us trying to set the standard that, like, we aren't perfect. We need to be forgiving, and we need to let people grow. We need to let people evolve, because I want people to do that for me, so I'm going to do that for other people.
This is and you guys, I think this is one of the reasons why your fans are so fanatical. Why they like you guys so much is this is a message that you guys seem to be authentic. I hear the message a lot, but I don't see too many authentic people delivering that message. Did you guys start out your podcast with a particular goal and then it morphed into something else, or has it become what you thought it was going to become?
Yeah, we started out when we were actually almost 30. We're 31 now, but we were going through our Saturn return, if you're into that woo-woo stuff, as we are. But a lot of things were happening and changing, and we were kind of faced with this time in our life where we were choosing like what we really wanted to do, like what lit us up, who lit us up, just kind of thinking about those things more deeply. And so we just started with the conversation. We were super corny in the beginning. Like we had segments like 20s us, 30s us, talking about like, shit that we did in our 20s and now like what we're looking forward to in our 30s.
Did you think it was going to be a business, or was it just like, we're going to have fun?
No, not at all. We were on our closet floors, like just
definitely
playing.
not, because we're 31.
Honestly,
so like we definitely didn't think
naming it almost 30
it was going to be
part.
anything past. Literally.
Soon it'll be
Cross that
almost
bridge.
40.
That's how far I thought it was going to go.
Then once, Krista is so, business minded, and, for me, like the creative part of it was just pulling me so hard that like we just showed up without even thinking. And soon after, even just 6 months in, we started making money. So, it just came from us. It came from a time in our life that was happening in real time. We were learning, and that's the whole thing, is we're learning right along with our audience. And I think that's why we've become so successful, because we don't claim to be experts and gurus. We try to bring people on to have these conversations so we can learn. But now we're learning that the experts and gurus are humans too. Like we have to be so forgiving. But just to like kind of close the loop on women supporting women too, I just think, what we try to do as hosts and as quote unquote leaders of this community is it really does start with us. Like we are doing the work every day, whether it's in therapy, meditation, healings, like whatever it is, we are really committed to the work we need to do on ourselves in order to show up as our best selves. And I think sometimes when women are being hard on other women, it's because they're neglecting to do their own work. And I know on days when I'm feeling a little bit empty or feeling like I haven't given myself some love or reflection, whatever it is, I'm like scrolling Instagram and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how the fuck did she get that deal? What the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then the next day I'll be like, oh my God, good for her. That's fucking amazing. Like you just know, I notice that when I'm taking care of myself and I'm doing the work, that I am so much more supportive of every human.
Yeah.
As you guys have been like talking about yourselves and being really open and honest with your audience about your process, how's that been relationship wise? Have you guys been able to handle that?
Well, sips tea. I actually just had a situation where she'll never listen. So my mom's getting remarried, and I met my new dad a few weeks ago, and he's interesting. He's like an old perv. Like he's just like, do you know what I mean? Like he just like has these weird jokes that are like really off color and like odd, and it just was like
kind of guy.
Yeah. so normally I'm down, but it was just very weird delivery and very weird.
It's the first time he's meeting you.
First time he's meeting me and just like saying weird ass shit.
Like what? What did he say?
So like,
Yeah, I want to know.
who's the one football player that was like Christian?
Cap.
Oh,
With the Broncos?
Tebow.
Tebow. So we're like chilling there, and he's like, literally out of the blue, we're talking about Tim Tebow somehow. Bless. Who knows how we got there? Me and Justin, my boyfriend, and he's like, oh yeah. He's like, Tim Tebow's saving it for marriage. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, have you seen his new girlfriend? I'm like, no. And he's like, she's a Miss Universe. I'm like, means zero to me. And he's like, yeah, and if I had a girlfriend like that, I don't know if I'd be able to save it until marriage. And I'm like, oh my God.
My head's going to explode.
No, literally. I'm like, eh.
Like, all right, dude, calm down.
No, it's just like one of like, he also too, we're from Ohio. And he's like, yeah, one thing I noticed about these LA girls is not a lot of them have their original parts. Oh my God.
You're not selling it that easy.
I know. I feel like these are very normal observations.
And he listens to Mind Pump.
Sounds like an honest guy.
It's also all about the delivery. If you're like not,
No, you're right.
Yeah, literally, he's like, they don't have their original parts, and you're not smiling and laughing, like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I talked a lot about that on the podcast, and my mom listened, and we haven't talked in 3 weeks. So
Oh no.
I know. I apologized in like text and stuff, and everything like that. But that's something that I have a hard time with, is like for my relationship, my personal relationship with Justin, who I've been with for 6 years. I don't share much, to be honest. All of it's good, with us. I'm so happy and everything like that. But he is very personal, and I need to be respectful of the fact that he is he's very private. And, we had conversations early on in our relationship that he's like, it's important to me that you keep our relationship private and just with us. And I'd love if you respect that. So where I do tell little things about us, I really don't share, much. I would like to share more, but I'm respectful of that. And
It's great he communicated that to you.
Yeah. Probably he heard something. Yeah. It wasn't just
shit.
prompted. Literally.
I know you.
It was.
Please don't talk about
I'm like,
this.
so Justin was about to finish last night, and then and he's like,
And
can
I'm
you
like-
please?
And I'm like, get me the glasses.
I'm showing the clowns.
Literally.
If you're dating me, you have to be okay with the fact that I'm gonna because I am such a big mouth. It was the last straw on the camel's back for my marriage.
I remember
Really?
you telling us
Yeah,
that.
it was one of the reasons. It was I mean, we were on that path anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was the last straw because when I start talking, I'll just start talking. You ask me anything, I'm going to tell you.
I know.
And so luckily, the girl I'm with now, very much in love and very, very serious. And she's like, "Did you tell him about the time we did? You should tell him." I'm like, "Babe."
Oh my God, I love that.
I'm like,
It's so
calm down.
interesting.
Yeah.
But that's the thing too, is if you're unhappy, the stuff you're going to say, it's going to make someone uncomfortable.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And
Sure.
like, if I was unhappy, it would be like, it's really hard when guys are just always blah, 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 but so everything I say is positive because that's how I feel. But yeah, the sex stuff, he's very like,
And we've learned over time. I think in the beginning,
Oh, yeah.
we've shared about family. Like if I'm dating someone, I've shared, and I've just learned just energetically, like not to put it out there as soon as I was putting it out there.
Oh, sure.
Because like honestly, we get on the air and we're like, obviously we're best friends, so we're just chatting like as we do. And I feel like our community is like our friends. So it does feel so comfortable. And like it's a double-edged sword where like, I'll have my solo episode about the sacredness of being single and like talking all about that. And then I'm like, fuck, like what's going to happen when I'm in a relationship? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where, like, how are they going to take that? And how much do I share about that because of the fact that this single time in my life has been important to the community too, those of them who relate. So, I don't know. We're just kind of like figuring it out as we go. But I think as it relates to like romantic relationships, erring on the side of private, at least in the beginning, is going to be.
I think that's a smart. I think it's a smart strategy. We're all very careful about that. I
guys
try.
are good.
I keep my kids very private.
know,
I talk about them, but I don't even use their names, and I don't talk about. I'm very, very private with that kind of stuff.
The only think of this. I think the stories that I try and share, because Katrina's very private. She has no social media. Like I keep her off. Although ironically, the last few posts I've had her in, right, and we're about her. But for the most part, I keep most of that. And I think it's even more so than respecting her privacy. It's that there's a part of me, because my whole life is public, that I want. That I feel like is just mine.
know.
Like I share everything, so there is a part of me that's like, well, I want to have something that I keep that I feel like is
100%.
only mine.
Yeah,
So,
he never takes pictures of the furry conventions he goes to.
I know.
Or invites us.
but I
He's
do.
a raccoon, everybody.
But I do think there is a lot of value in, because Katrina and I think have an incredible. We've been together for 8 years, and tons of growth in those 8 years, and so I do like to share growth moments in our relationship,
Yeah.
i.e.
Yeah,
like
I
when
agree.
we read the Sex at Dawn book together, and that was challenging to read it together, but what we got out of it, I think there was lots of lessons in that. So when I find there's moments in our relationship that I grew from, or that were challenging for me, I typically like to lead and share the ones where I'm the asshole, or I fucking learned the lesson, versus putting her on Front Street like that.
Yeah, yesterday she was a bitch.
Yeah, literally. Hey guys, I want to talk about when your girlfriend's a big old bitch.
Right. I think that's part of the strategy, right? If you're the one who's in control, you're on the podcast, you're leading, you're talking about your partner. It's like, okay, I'm going to share the stories that make me the asshole because I can get myself out of this, versus she doesn't have a mic to get herself out of it.
Yeah.
So
That's so true.
I'll always present her, and I'll always try to present her in that light. And so far, it's been really, really good. She didn't like me at the very beginning of the podcast, because when we first started, I was kind of like the the bro single guy. Like I was kind of that character.
Yeah, I feel
was bodybuilding like crazy. All my pictures were with no shirt off, and I wasn't posting or talking about her, so people referred to me or thought of me as the single guy, even though I wasn't. And so I know that wasn't like the best ever. But the thing that, I mean, we didn't have any problems over it. I mean, she's never cared enough about this whole thing to allow it to affect our growth and our relationship. And a lot of our audience, I think, really appreciates when we do share the wife stories or the stories with our relationship, where we learn, where we grew and we learned from something.
It's also therapeutic. It's also therapeutic for me personally. It's, a little bit selfish, sharing those things. I find I grow from them. Speaking of dating, do you guys ever talk about the challenges or the potential challenges of being successful, confident, women, and then trying to also find, to date a guy who is comfortable with the fact that you're successful and confident and doing all those things? You guys ever talk about that? Because I've heard I used to train a lot of doctors, and a few of my clients were women, and they used to tell me it was hard for them to find men because they're successful surgeons or whatever, and guys may be intimidated by that.
I think too, like that a lot of, and I'm kind of realizing this now, is like it is challenging for sure. I have the most beautiful, cool friends in the world who, have a hard time. But also I feel like a lot of women right now are really in their masculine with too much, and I'm saying this from experience as someone that struggles with that. But like, if you are a surgeon and you're in your masculine all day, like working, and then you kind of take that masculine energy, and I don't mean it as like, going over to a guy's house wearing a skirt being like, hi, take me on a date. But I mean it in like the softness and the ease and like the femininity that like most relationships, if you're looking for a male, really desire. It's like you have to kind of ease into it. And I feel like a lot of women, and we've seen this in our community, are taking the masculine energy to dating, and it's not really successful.
This is a really cool topic because of I think the climate is like we've become so. I mean, we needed this, right? There was a time when women couldn't vote and it wasn't fair. Yeah. But we've swung so far the other direction that I feel like these are some of the side effects of that. Would you agree?
Yeah. What are the male and female energies and qualities? How would you describe those?
I think for the masculine energy, it is like, just as it relates to dating, it's like planning things, like taking the lead on whatever that means, whether it's dates or, self-development. And it is coming in kind of with that, more hard energy or aggressiveness. And for me, like, I didn't realize that I was bringing a masculine energy into dating with my expectations. So like, I just had these like hard and fast expectations about, who I wanted to date. And I was kind of holding myself on this pedestal. Not that I think I'm like the shit, but I was like, but I deserve this and I deserve this. And I wasn't leaving room for, someone to not only see the good things about me, but see the things that like aren't so perfect, and for them to love me anyway. Right. Yeah. So I love being in my feminine. As we found out on the podcast and through some of our guests, that I'm living my first lifetime as a woman. I've spent every other lifetime as a boy.
Wait, who did this for you?
A bunch of psychics have told us this. Yeah. We've dated, and she's been my dad.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Is that not hilarious?
This is wild.
It's actually probably 4 times it's been confirmed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it makes sense. Like I definitely have that tomboy side of me, but it feels so good. I'm kind of watching myself now as I like date people, where I just allow myself to be softer, to allow them to hold me, because I'm complaining about them not stepping up, and I'm not giving them room to step up.
Oh, I see.
Do you know what I mean?
This is a conversation. So I brought this up. My girl's family is really, all the men are really good about like opening the door for the women and stuff. And this was especially the car door. And so this was something that I would never train myself to be like this, right? I didn't have my dad. My dad died when I was 7, so I didn't have someone to teach me this. But I'm also somebody who's growth minded and like, okay, this is a learned behavior I could teach myself to do. And one of the things that we used to always get, I'll never forget her mom like schooling her on it. And she's my girl has very tomboy traits, aggressive, and she bolts to the car. And I'm like, you want me to run to get to the car to open it? Like, I need you to hold back. And so this was like a thing that we'd go back and forth on this conversation. Her mom had to step in one time and say, honey, you like sprint to the car and then you you want him to open the door for you, but you beat him to the door every single time.
That's a good analogy just for
right. It came to mind when you just said that. That's why I shared it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm definitely learning.
Yeah.
But then I also want to be able, and I just talking about like the dependency part of a relationship and how that feels. I'm like averse to that because that feels like too feminine and vulnerable.
Sure.
Which dependency has like a negative connotation, but being able to be collaborative within a relationship, be independent within a relationship. You asked about being successful and all of that. And being able to do that while in a relationship, I think is like one of my greatest lessons.
Yeah, because I think, a lot of men, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like, of course they want their girl to be successful for her happiness. But I don't think a man sees a woman and is like, oh, I want her to be, they could, but like, it's more so like you want her to be like, I don't know, just like warm and comforting and like she laughs a lot and like she's easy to be around and like she's just got that like femininity that really just like makes you feel good and then makes her feel good in turn.
Well, I gave this example a while ago where like even if there's a really aggressive, go-getter type classic, masculine male, right? He wants to be able to go home and his girl say, man, I am so tired. I'm exhausted. Like today was terrible. And he wants to hear her say, honey, thank you for doing that. You can do it. Go out there and make it happen because I got faith. And then the guy will just
trust.
Holy shit, the energy I just got from her saying that makes me feel so powerful.
Guys love having that trust from women. Being like, hey, will you pick out where we're going to dinner? Like, or will you pick out what's on the menu? Like, I'd love if you just, what I like, pick out like what's on the menu for me.
Basically make our egos.
Well, literally, one of my gay friends told me, he's like, your job is to stroke ego all day. Yeah. And I literally took that so seriously. I'm like, you're so right. But it's really like
you're so strong.
You're so strong and like you're so beautiful. But like women, it's like I have thousands of women that stroke my ego all day. Do you know what I mean? Like my comments, it's silly and I don't read it, but it's like you're beautiful, you have cute clothes, whatever. But guys don't really have that. But outside of that, my relationship with Justin has changed so much since I've been able to like tap in more to my feminine energy with him because he doesn't feel as attacked. He doesn't feel as like belittled by me being like because I used to be very like, all right, this is how it's going to be because, I need X, Y, and Z, da-da-da-da. But that's really a fear mentality. When I'm coming at him with demands, when I'm coming at him not listening from his side or not being kind or warm or like understanding, that's really a fear mentality that I have that's not going to get the response that I want. So I've learned that like the softer I come to him, like the softer response I get and the better things are. And it's just been a really beautiful thing for me to learn in the past couple years about tapping into my femininity. And it has got me like better results than anything demanding or being like in my masculine as ever.
That's awesome. And now going along these lines, you guys recently did a trip down to Costa Rica and did an ayahuasca ceremony. Was that the first time you guys ever done anything like that?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was incredible. We went down to Rhythmia in Costa Rica and we did 4 nights of plant medicine, Monday through Thursday, and each night got a bit more intense. Krista and our experience, and I'll let her speak to hers, but was relatively gentle. We were going into it thinking we were going to be like purging and shitting our brains out. Like this is.
I thought I was going to move and live in a teepee for the rest of my life with dreads. No joke. I was like, I'm done, you guys. Almost 30 is no more.
But it was, all in all, it was really gentle. And what was so beautiful, we each had our visions and our own experiences and what's happening now. They say that 50% of the work is done there. And then through the weeks, months, even years following, the integration is happening. So we've actually experienced a lot of the effects of the journeys like now, you know, like it's really fascinating. But what was so beautiful was that we were like the youngest ones there. So we're with about 70 other people in the group, which is wild.
That's a big group.
It's huge.
Wild. And you walk in, you know, for ceremony, and there's like rows of beds and buckets and, you know, blankets and pillows and whatever. But witnessing the healing of people who are mainly 50s, 60s, 70s. Like coming in with a lifetime of trauma, repression, addiction, you know, depression, anxiety. Like it was the most, like for me, the biggest part of my healing was witnessing that. And, you know, we would recommend going down there. Anyone who wants to try it, it's a very safe and supportive place to do it for your first time.
We could hook you guys up if you want.
Yeah, they do it right. Yeah, I'd be curious to know what you guys think about it, just reading about it. But, you know, the founder, Gerard Powell, Jerry, he's wild and amazing, and his story's pretty incredible. And I didn't know what I was going to think of him. I was like, oh, this guy seems fucking wacky, and I'm not really sure. And I just we fell in love with him, and he's completely changed his life and thousands of others. And
was that the first time you guys had ever done anything like a psychedelic or anything?
She's
done
psychedelics. I've never. So I went from 0 to 100, but.
Yeah, interesting. You know, it's funny. We all had in the beginning when we started Mind Pump, we're like, yeah, maybe we'll. But then it kind of turned into this like
trend.
Yeah, and I feel like it's being misused.
We're so anti-trend.
And so now
I feel that
it is being
misused.
It is being, but they are the only licensed retreat that does ayahuasca
in the world.
In the world.
They have medical staff on site, and they have integration sessions to help with you. And my thing is I agree with you. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to do it because it felt trendy. But then we had this opportunity to go there with them for free. And I was like, okay, cool. Like this happened and it was easy. And I just think it's a plant, you know, like, so I'm like, oh, like it's definitely trendy and popular, but I'm like, it's a plant at its core.
Sure.
So like the ideas around it and everything that people believe can be whatever, but like I know in my heart that this is something of the earth, and like it will show me whatever I need to be shown.
There's no doubt that it's that they're powerful tools.
Yeah.
It's how those tools are wielded.
For sure.
Sometimes I'm like, all right, come on now, like,
Totally.
be careful with that. I don't remember who. I know Carl Jung said, "Beware of unearned wisdom." And we've interviewed.
I feel that.
And we've interviewed, you know, Paul Chek, who's also a shaman. And he said, yeah, he goes, it'll show you things, but it's how you use them. And again, you got to beware of that unearned wisdom, because that can turn into something quite darker.
And that's why I think Rhythmia is so good, because of the integration sessions, the workshops. I mean, they hold your hand and they tell you to go to everything. You know, that was work that week. That was not vacation.
Yeah.
We were scheduled almost every hour of the day leading up to ceremony and then the next day. And it really did help, you know, because people were feeling some things that were dark, and they didn't see the light until like the last night of ceremony. So to be kind of floundering and not having that support, I would imagine would be really, really scary and might be dangerous.
Interesting. One thing that we talk about a lot on our show is how much we've changed and grown in the short time we've had the show. And, you know, we've been on air for 4 years, but I feel like I know I've grown 15 years worth in that 4 year period.
Yes.
And a lot of it having to do with the fact that we constantly are communicating and talking, and you can hear yourself.
Yeah.
How different have you guys become since you started? Have you guys gone through that growth period as well? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I think it is. And that's what I say every time. I'm like, I listen to our podcast just to hear myself and like to see it as a growth opportunity, to hear when, you know, I have vocal inflection and I shouldn't, to hear when I have fillers, to hear when I'm not in my voice, to hear when I could have asked a question better, you know, to hear when I'm talking and I really didn't have anything to say. So there's just a lot of opportunities that a podcast provides you. And we have, you know, self-help development, wellness people on every week. So that actually has been challenging, is kind of filtering out all the messages that we get. And I'm sure for you guys too, it's like, it's almost like, kind of in a way, sometimes in my personal life, I kind of am trying to find better ways to turn off, because I'm provided with so much growth every single day. Every conversation about the business is a conversation, almost every, that I've never had before. Decisions that I've never had to make before. People I'm meeting that I've never, you know, met before, never thought I'd meet before. And then I'm doing all these different things. It's almost like I try and find ways to turn off more. And I've just grown so much. I don't know. It's just been like, it feels more like a homecoming for me then it feels like growth, but it feels more like a homecoming. It's
see.
more like I'm finally able to be the person that I've wanted to be and to live the life that I've always dreamed and the life that I really should have before I stopped drinking, partying, like not treating my body the right way, not like taking my life seriously. So it's just felt like so good.
It can be a little bit like learning how to do a golf swing, and you got like
And that's exactly what I was thinking.
Right.
You took the analogy right out of my mouth. I was like,
What club we using, boys?
and it's like somebody's telling you that your wrist is rolling, your hips are sliding, your
Sandwich.
elbows flared out, your head's you're not looking at the ball. Like you have all these things. It's like, let me just take one of those things.
Yes.
And let's just focus on that, get that really honed in. So speaking to that, well, what's the most recent thing that you got, like recent takeaway that you've applied to your life now that you're doing differently before that you've picked up on a recent guest?
I have a good one for sex, actually.
Oh,
let's
cool.
hear it. Those are good.
It's actually, so when you first start to have sex with someone, it's actually so this is pretty graphic, but like when he enters you, to keep the dick inside you for like for like 5 to 10 seconds. And it allows like your energetic bodies to connect on a deeper level and allows her to enjoy it more and him to enjoy it much more. So instead of just getting started right away with like the in and out fucking.
So it's like put it in, leave it.
Yeah, put it in, like kiss, do whatever.
Like
kind
scan first.
yeah, literally.
You pass.
Just put it in and like feel it inside of you for like 5 to 10
right.
seconds.
Wow.
And then, so that was one thing that I really liked.
Why aren't you moving? I'm trying not to come. Oh, I thought you were just
Or you're just
Yeah,
like
that might
1,
backfire.
2, 3, 4. That's one. And then
That's an interesting tip. That's great.
Yeah.
it's a good one.
Well, I also, and to piggyback off of that, it's understanding the energetics, like when you do have sex with someone. So for me, like my past thing was like, I wanted to have sex as soon as possible so I could see what was up and if we were compatible. And knowing that, you have sex and then for like 2 weeks, like I was wondering why I was feeling so like vulnerable and like attached and like kind of crazy and wondering why he wasn't texting me like within the next 10 minutes, like, and there is something chemically and energetically that happens, so being more aware of that and also not letting people in who don't feel you yet. So John, this is a past episode, but I always remember that with John Wineland, and he was like staring straight at me. He's like, don't let anyone in who isn't feeling you yet.
Yes.
And he's like, it could happen on the first date. You could really feel that they feel you.
Sure.
And I don't mean
It's more rare, but absolutely.
Yes.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And then he's like, but until that happens, like you really shouldn't let them in. It's because they leave an energetic imprint on you that will take a little bit of time to like scrub out.
Energetically speaking, for forever since the the 1960s, really, energetically speaking, women had to be more choosy because we weren't able to separate sex from the potential of pregnancy. And of course, before that, then we had condoms and stuff. But I'm talking about before birth control. Birth control gets invented, and now we have, for the first time ever, effectively separated the act of sex from the potential risk of pregnancy, and that has come with its own major challenges. And so I think a lot of times we're like, oh, we could just have sex and it's fun and we'll enjoy it, and that can be true sometimes. But I think for the most part, there's a lot more that goes into it, and if you seek that more, it's so much more fulfilling. And it's funny saying this as a 40-year-old man, because 20-year-old me would have been like, whatever. But you learn this, I think, later on. It makes a huge difference.
I completely agree. Yeah, that was a really good tip. John talked about the masculine and feminine. You guys should have him on if you haven't.
Yeah,
Sounds
John's
interesting.
He's amazing about relationships and intimacy and there was something too. We are good friends with a Reiki healer. She's like an energy healer, Milana Snow. And when we're doing these tours and we're at these events, with 200 people, whatever, I used to get really tired because I would just be like so energy giving. You're nervous, you're anxious, and you want to hug everyone, you want to talk to everyone, you want to make them feel good. And I didn't allow the receiving of their energy too. So if someone's going to meet you guys at any of your events or on your tour, they're going to be so excited. Like they have a lot of energy towards you, and you want to be able to receive that in a healthy way. So seeing the cyclical aspect of our energies, me giving them energy, them giving me energy, and having it fill me up has been really, really helpful for like me being able to have the endurance for all of our events. And then too, like at the end of the night on tour, or someone could do this, if they had a big presentation or something like that, where I take the energy from my head and bring it all the way down through my feet, through the ground, and just kind of circulate it. So that if I'm really, really wired, if I have a lot of adrenaline from something, I'll just try and circulate my energy through my body so that it can just like either leave or like just be pulled down through the ground so that I can relax.
Is this like a practice that you do before you go and talk? Are there any other practices you guys do before you go out and talk to your audience?
Yeah, we'll
pull my shirt down.
Yeah,
pull my tits out.
We'll meditate. I like to
try and be quiet.
Yeah, be quiet. Or I have kind of like a music, whether it's 432 hertz or just kind of like more meditation playlists that I have. And she and I will connect before a show just to kind of run through logistics and then just we scissor and just
we got to connect, you know what I mean?
This podcast is finally turning my direction here.
What lifetime are we in right now? You my dad.
Justin and Adam like to wrestle naked.
Oh, that's fun.
Get out the energy.
Well,
that's fun.
I film it, but
it's all pent up.
It's whatever.
But we're learning that too, and I think it'll change for this year for the tour. When we have live shows and they're more presentational and all of that. But I was going to say to the Lacey Phillips, who we're having on tour this year, but she talks a lot about shadow and owning those parts of you so that it doesn't own you. And I've just been looking a lot at that recently because I think I was a little bit naive to those parts of me when I was, in my teens and even into college. And now that like we are doing all of this work, we are becoming more successful. It's like those parts of me are so magnified, and it's hard not to be ashamed of them. It's hard not to think that, in a partnership, I want to be the best that I can for Krista, best that I can for Almost 30, the community. So really looking at those things and having like a really loving heart when I look at them, like holding them and knowing that they come from my childhood and just owning them rather than having them just kind of run my everyday and my every thought.
Loving yourself like somebody you care about.
Yeah. It's cheesy, but honestly, it's a
very powerful
practice. It's like it's very hard. But then you like start to notice that people love you no matter what. You're like, oh my God, like because I love myself no matter what. They love me no matter what,
Yeah, no, I learned that lesson when I had my son. My first, he was born and I see him walking around and he's like a spitting image of me. And I just loved him so unconditionally. And then I thought to myself like, wait, I can love him unconditionally. He's so much like I am. Why can't I be like that with myself?
I said that the other day. I was like, I think when people have kids, it gives them permission to love themselves more.
100%.
And they may not know it, but it's like you're loving that you created it. It's you.
Absolutely. Like let's say you stutter and then you have a child who stutters, but you love them so much and you find it almost endearing. Oh, that's my kid. Then like, oh shit, you can reverse that and flip that on yourself.
But then on the flip, some people hate things that their kids do because it reminds them.
You're right. I think it could go either direction.
Yeah.
For me, it was the opposite.
Right. If you're massively insecure, it'll just drive that insecurity. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're somebody who's a little more open to learn and grow, like yourself, like you see it and go, oh,
it changed me. It was a radical shift to have it on. Yeah, absolutely.
There was one other learning too that I want to talk about. Dan Savage. Do you guys know him?
Yeah, love guy or whatever.
Cast.
Yeah, that's right.
He's awesome. He is like a leader in the LGBTQ space, and he has Savage Love and all this stuff. And he came on and we talked a lot about monogamy. And he talked a lot about how, as we know, humans weren't necessarily meant to be monogamous. But when someone is in a long-term relationship and they are in a monogamous relationship, say they're married for 20 years, and if they were to cheat, we like discredit every other part of their relationship.
Oh, right.
So it's like one night you cheat on someone, that shouldn't discredit 20 years of a happy marriage or 20 years of a good marriage, and how we need to kind of rethink our thought process around cheating and around being unfaithful because we're living longer and all of these different things. And that really did make me think differently about that and being more forgiving for other people.
Yeah, it carried major potential consequences for most of human history. That's why. So if your girl cheated on you, she would bear a child that wasn't yours, and then you would have to expend resources taking care of this child and not passing on your genes, and then vice versa. if he cheated, he could potentially not want to help care for me, because for a lot of human history, men were the protectors and providers. And so it carried terrible consequences. Today, it's not really the same thing, but we have a lot of those remnants of that, I think, where it comes from. So looking ahead, like, what's the ultimate vision for Almost 30, the brand, the company, the podcast? Like, where would you guys like to see it go? And what would you guys like to see it achieve?
Yeah, and what about Almost 90? Like, what's that?
That's what's up.
Almost 30 to us is already in our hearts a media company, and we want to be able to empower other women to first be themselves, and from there create the content that will pour from them organically, make impact that will support other women, support other human beings, that will help people around the world to feel like they can be themselves as they navigate any transition. So the media umbrella is podcasting, and any other content. Events, books, unscripted, like whatever kind of is born from it. We trust that it'll be the right thing.
I think too, like, no one, like, what we're doing is new. So, not until recently people had podcasts that allowed them to do it full time and allowed them to have a team and allowed them to tour. So when I think about the future, I think about like what I want and what I want to impact, but like I don't think what I want to do is necessarily out there yet. So I'm kind of just like working as hard as we can right now to build a sustainable life and business, and then really just like seeing things, doors open as they do, because I'm not, it's like when I look at the standard path, it's like agents and, managers and stuff, when we were talking to networks and everything, would come to us with the same shit. They're like, we're going to get you guys a book deal. I'm like, I don't want to write a fucking book. I don't give a shit about a book. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, why? Because you've seen it. Like, I don't want to write a book. I don't want to do all these certain things. So it's like, you guys don't know the future. And I'm probably a better predictor than you, even though I don't know it. So like, unless you come to me with some new shit, then like, I don't care.
I like that.
Well said. Well said. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh my God, thanks.
Yeah, it's awesome watching you guys. Really awesome watching you guys grow. So
always fun hanging out with you girls.
I know.
We love you guys.
We love you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mind Pump. If your goal is to build and shape your body, dramatically improve your health and energy, and maximize your overall performance, check out our discounted RGB Super Bundle at mindpumpmedia.com. The RGB Super Bundle includes MAPS Anabolic, MAPS Performance, and MAPS Aesthetic. 9 months of phased expert exercise programming designed by Sal, Adam, and Justin to systematically transform the way your body looks, feels, and performs. With detailed workout blueprints and over 200 videos, the RGB Super Bundle is like having Sal, Adam, and Justin as your own personal trainers, but at a fraction of the price. The RGB Super Bundle has a full 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can get it now, plus other valuable free resources at mindpumpmedia.com. If you enjoy this show, please share the love by leaving us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes, and by introducing Mind Pump to your friends and family. We thank you for your support, and until next time, this is Mind Pump.